Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to the Dogland Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Joki. I don't have Jack McCurry with me today, but I do have a very special guest. He is a voice familiar to our listeners. He is Mr. Tony Serino, one of the hosts of the AFC North talk show on YouTube. You've probably heard him on Locked On Steelers in the past. Tony, it's been quite a while since we've had a chance to sit down and talk to you. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm excited. Of course, it's a huge game, Steelers Browns. This is my youth. This is the rivalry that I grew up with. And how about this? It's a playoff game. I can't wait.
Yeah, the Browns and Steelers are going to meet for the second consecutive week on Sunday night. The last time they met in the playoffs was back in 2003. I will not discuss that game at all because it still haunts me. Only if Dennis Northcutt catches that football. We're probably talking about a different course of history for the Browns over the last 20 years, which is crazy to think how one catch may have changed things overall. But
Yeah. Who could forget the shootout between Tommy Maddox and Kelly Holcomb? What a game.
yeah, touchdown Tommy, right?
That's
I
right.
think I think
T
that's what they
gun.
call him. Um, and then he quickly turned into turnover Tommy, which
Oh,
which
yeah.
led y'all to Ben Roethlisberger. So
That's right.
I think that was a fair trade off. Um, but this game on Sunday night, Tony, it had the makings of something special, right? You know, Browns, Steelers in the playoffs, the Browns being in the postseason for the first time um, in almost 20 years. But there's been quite a dark cloud put over this game because of all the positive COVID tests for the Browns, including head coach Kevin Stefanski, a whole bunch of starters, including Joe Batonio, Harrison Bryant, today Ronnie Harrison, Kadero Hodge, who's mostly a backup, but sees significant snaps and is someone who's really important in the running game as a receiver. Kevin Johnson, Malcolm Smith, and Denzel Ward, who, if my math is correct, he can be activated the morning of the game uh, between the Steelers and Browns. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's a whole bunch of Browns players missing, and you know, it's almost to the point of you know it's completely right now. There's a competitive disadvantage with everything that's going on, especially not having the future coach of the year in Stefanski being able to be on
Yeah.
the sidelines and calling plays, and somebody who's been so unflappable this season, somebody who's been so calm and has weathered this entire storm. Uh, you know, starting not having a training camp, being a new head coach, and dealing with all the COVID stuff, just like everybody else has. But you know, being a first year head coach, taking the Browns to 11-5, and you know, making the playoffs, and there's to my uh, knowledge, there's no doubt he should be coach of the year. So. Um, you know, right now there's a competitive disadvantage, and you know, there's a lot of talk of uh, maybe postponing the game, but you know the NFL still says that they plan on playing on Sunday night. Um, and to be honest, if they postpone it, there's really not much the Browns can gain based on when these players and coaches tested positive.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate that you know almost 20 years later, the Browns and Steelers get to meet in the playoffs again, and it's the first time the Browns are in the playoffs in that time. And unfortunately, this COVID thing has really put a damper on what should have been a great game on Sunday night.
And it may still be a great game, right? I mean, look, these are two good football teams. The Browns won 11 games this year, and I know that look, they're going to be without Joel Batonio, they're going to be without Denzel Ward, they're going to be without key players. But the one that hurts, and the one that I think is really unfortunate, right? Because you lose players throughout the year, and I know this is we're in a pandemic right now, and this is these are crazy circumstances. Not like they lost Joel Batonio to like a blown Achilles or anything like that. Like yes, COVID, he could play if the game were postponed by probably 4 or 5 days. But um, the one that hurts the most is Stefanski, because what other case do you have where your coach of the year candidate who turned this franchise around from what was a 6-10 team a year ago. We knew this team had the talent, right? But they needed the structure, and he in 1 year turned a team from 6-10 to an 11-5 football team ready to play a playoff game. And he's your play caller as well. and he can't be there. He can't be on the sideline. I know there's a lot of confidence in Van Pelt, and Browns fans say Stefanski's going to have him prepared and whatnot, and I'm sure that's true, but it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same as what it was in the regular season, and there's always going to be that if the Browns do lose this game, especially what if the Browns were to lose this game close? What ifs that would happen there in Cleveland of what if Stefanski was there? What if he was calling the plays at the end? And what if they had pulled off the upset? It does. You're right. It does diminish this matchup in some way. But look, I'm still excited for it because I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, being real here. This is a Steeler team that has overlooked teams this year. I mean, literally overlooked them. Stephon Tuitt, before the Steelers played the Baltimore Ravens, when the Ravens were ravaged by COVID. I mean, they lost basically half the roster, and the game had to be moved from Thursday to the next Wednesday. Okay, and Stephon Tuitt, who was not even going to play in that game, tweeted before the game, should be an easy one. Let's pad the stats, boys. I mean, it was something like that. He definitely used the phrase, should be an easy one. That was how the Steelers entered that game. That was the mindset of that team, because not only was it the mindset, they were so confident they were willing to tweet it to the public, right? Not just keep that in the locker room. Oh yeah, we're gonna walk through these guys. No. We can tweet this and it still won't have an effect. And while the Steelers did win that football game, I think you look back to that game itself and all the problems the Steelers had, kind of came to the forefront in that game, specifically on the offensive side. So look, the one thing that Browns fans should not worry about in this game is that the Steelers offense and the problems the Steelers have had this year and the reasons why the Steelers have lost football games this year have not really been opponent related. Look, this Steeler team went to Cincinnati on Monday night a couple weeks ago and completely embarrassed itself in front of the national media, in front of the nation itself. So it could very easily happen again on Sunday night.
And this Steeler team is what basically played one good quarter against the Colts, right? And otherwise, last Sunday would have been for the division title.
Yes.
And who's to say what would have happened, if they would have played for the division title last week? But it's been well documented, some of the stuff that's gone on in Pittsburgh, right? The Juju dancing, which I didn't see any video of him dancing last Sunday. I did not see that. I haven't gone back to look to see.
Didn't he do the dance after he scored the touchdown? I think he danced after that, and then they missed a 2-point conversion. So it's
maybe
great job.
Yeah, but I can only imagine what would have happened if he would have danced on that Browns logo. Yeah. Maybe throwbacks of was that William Green and Joey Porter before the game?
I was going to say Joey Porter for sure.
They got kicked out before the game even started. But look, the Steelers team, there's certainly a lot of questions, right? And I've heard talk this week of maybe using Josh Dobbs in short yard situations, which seems almost unheard of with a quarterback like Ben Roethlisberger, right? You have one of the best quarterbacks to ever lace it up, and the amount of Super Bowls that he's won, and you're talking about maybe bringing in a backup quarterback in short yardage situations just to give a different look, because maybe you don't have the confidence in Big Ben. And to me, the biggest problem with the Steelers has been the lack of a running game.
Yeah.
That's not who Pittsburgh is. To not have a running game is certainly not who the Steelers are. And to be honest, early on in the season when they were having success, I know they started 11-0 to start the year, but that first month of the season, they were running the football really well. What's happened over the course of the season that the running game has not been able to fully develop? Is it the fact that Roethlisberger really hasn't been able to get those deep shots, those medium to long range deep shots, so teams are just loading the box, kind of like the Jets did a few weeks ago against the Browns when they were lacking all their receivers?
It's definitely that, although I guess I'll push back a little bit on the idea that they were good. Look, stats-wise, they were good earlier in the year running the football. But I don't know if there was ever a time this year where I really felt confident in the running game, because those numbers that Connor were putting up were a little stat patty. It was the game he had against Denver. He had 15 carries for like 40-something yards, and then he ripped off a 60-yarder and at the very, very end of the game. and that put him over 100 for the game. I was like, okay, yeah, he ran for 100, but not. I mean, yes, he ran for 100, but I would have much rather 100 yards on 6-7 yard chunks and not just one big 60 yarder at the end of the game that was kind of meaningless because the game was over by that point. And then the next week against Houston, same kind of deal. Although that one a little more consistent because he didn't rip off one big one. It was a couple big ones in that game. But the problem with the running game, it just hasn't been consistent. It's never been a consistent. There are times this year, yes, where you'll see like Benny Snell against Cincinnati. Oh, he looked decent in that game. But the problem for this team is that the offensive line play has just not been good enough. And it's crazy to say that with guys like Marquise Pouncey and David DeCastro, both of which have been multiple-time Pro Bowlers. You have Alejandro Villanueva at left tackle, who at times in his career has been very, very good, one of the most underrated left tackles in the league at times. This is not that time. But this is a time when the offensive line is looking like, boy, we would much rather have Mike Munchak back in the building as the offensive line coach. And, you start wondering about what the long term of Alejandro Villanueva, who's in a contract year and seemingly going to be gone. And then you look at Okorafor on the right side and you say, look, you're going to be around because we don't have another body just yet. But, long term, I'm not sure that there's a starting spot for him either. And that's been the problem. You have Kevin Dotson at left guard, who was a backup all year, a rookie. He's probably going to start in this game, even though Matt Filer is going to be back, because the Steelers, I think, are more confident with Dotson as a run blocker. And I think that's been the biggest problem is the offensive line. And then you have the problem of James Conner. He had COVID at one point this year. He's had injury problems in the past. That he's not getting the kind of workload that I'm sure Tomlin would want because he wants that kind of workhorse type back. And so, Connor's the one guy who I can really count on to actually have some vision at the running back position. Benny Snell, for me, again, I know Benny Snell has had some times this year. You look at the Giants game, you look at the Bengals game where he looked competent, but those were like the only times. Every other time Benny Snell's out there, it's bad. He has no vision. He doesn't have the power that you would think he would have for a guy who, he talks about as a Benny Snell football. Benny Snell football is supposed to be converting 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. Unfortunately for the Steelers, 3rd and 4th and 1 has been an Achilles heel for them. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they've been terrible in short yardage situations. They have been multiple times this year denied at the goal line. And they've got to the point now where they don't even try to run the ball on the goal line because they know there's no way we're getting in. Even the simple, just like running back dives over the offensive line to score, to just reach the ball over. They can't even do that. Benny Snell tried that a couple weeks back, embarrassing his attempt to even try to dive over. So no, there's no semblance of a running game, and that does put all the emphasis of this offense on Ben Roethlisberger in the passing game. It has to be on, right? Steel fans will tell you, look, the games where we won this year, Ben was good. The games where we lost this year, Ben was bad. And that is true, but that is because it's the only way this offense can move the ball. They're only moving the ball through Ben. There's no semblance of a running game. And so the whole Dobbs situation, I like it because it's something else for defenses to worry about. And if you got to take Ben off the field sometimes, I'm for it because I'm not confident in when this team is handing the ball off to guys like James Conner, and certainly not Benny Snell.
You know what it reminds me of? There's a Thursday night football game. I want to say it was 11 years, 2010. It was the one where the Browns knocked the Steelers.
Oh, I don't want to remember that one.
I do because I was there. So that's
Wasn't
actually
it like 4 degrees or something?
Yes, it was cold. It was very cold. But remember that game? And I'm sure you do. But Josh Cribbs did everything that game for the Browns. They took Brady Quinn, which was a definitely addition by subtraction, taking him off the field and let Cribbs basically just run all over. I don't see that style for Josh Dobbs, but there's certainly an element there because he has the ability to throw the ball as well, that there's a lot of different things that you could do. And I don't find it a coincidence that you saw it this past week in the game between the Browns and Steelers, taking Mason Rudolph out and putting in Josh Dobbs to run a few things, just to give the Browns a few more things to think about heading into the game this Sunday. And to be honest, last Sunday, Mason Rudolph was able to rack up 300 yards passing by basically chucking it up there. They ran fades all day, which is kind of what they did last year. In that second game that they won, they just kind of chucked it up there. And I don't know if you're going to be able to get away with that this week, but especially if Denzel Ward is back.
Yeah.
But obviously, the Steelers receivers on the outside are very good with Juju and Claypool. Um, but I want to touch back on the running game because we were talking about the Steelers' offensive line really struggling. Another big blow for the Browns was losing Olivier Vernon to that Achilles injury last Sunday, and um, now obviously you still have a very stout line with Myles Garrett, Sheldon Richardson, Larry Ogunjobi. Those three are really solid. Claiborne's done okay, but he's going to be rotating in and out there with Porter Gustin on the other side opposite of Miles. Do you how do you feel about this Browns defensive line going up against the Steelers O line in a matchup 2 weeks in a row to where they're obviously going to be able to do a little bit more, and they're probably going to do a lot more than they did last Sunday. I felt like, and this was on offense too. I felt like the Browns were very vanilla last
Yeah.
Sunday,
Yeah.
intentionally, and I kind of felt that same way with the Steelers too. Just kind of like I said on offense, just throwing fades up there as well. But to where I didn't think the Browns were vanilla on that first drive where they scored that long touchdown run with Chubb, but I just felt like the game last week was very vanilla on both sides because they knew that they were probably going to be playing each other in back-to-back weeks, and you want to hide as much as you can, but this defensive line, seeing the Steelers' offensive line for a second week in a row, I think they're going to dial up a lot of different things. Do you think this Steelers O line are going to be able to handle it, especially if they have to? Uh, the Steelers get into these long situations, second down long, third down long, to where Myles Garrett and crew can go all out because they know that Big Ben has to throw the ball.
It's weird in a year where Alejandro Villanueva has not looked good, especially in the later half of the year. Myles Garrett didn't. Myles Garrett, who usually owns Villanueva in that matchup, Myles Garrett has been oddly silent in both matchups this year. My worry as a Steeler fan, of course, is that are you really gonna, it's the old can you beat a team 3 times, right? Can you do that to as good a player as Myles Garrett is? Can you shut him down? You shut him down twice. Can you shut him down 3 times? And I don't even know that I'd say that they really shut him down in the second matchup because while Myles Garrett didn't have a huge stat sheet, he did have a couple pressures in the game. But let's not forget that the play of the game, the reason why the Browns won that football game was the big mistake that Mason Rudolph made, and that was by pressure, right? The Browns got some pressure on Mason. Benny Snell had a horrible blitz pickup. And Mason was a deer in headlights in that moment, just wanted to get rid of the football, threw it right to, I believe it was MJ Stewart. So, look, the Browns had some success on the defensive line last week. Nothing's really going to change for the Steelers going into this week. While they will get Filer back, they're not going to start him, I would guess, at left guard because Dotson's actually been better. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a game where, look, Mason was willing to sit back there and take some hits and take some shots downfield. And I think it was very uncharacteristic of this Steeler offense because this has been a Steeler offense that has gotten rid of the football as quickly as anyone in the NFL. That's been Ben's MO this year, and that's been really the entire offense is quick passes, run after catch and run style of offense. And it's very risk averse, right? If you're getting rid of the football, well, you're not going to be taking sacks, right? No negative plays, and you're hopefully not going to throw interceptions. Although, boy, that was a problem against Cincinnati and Buffalo. But regardless of that, it's a style of offense that tries to move the football through little small chunks, but not take negative plays, not get yourself into that 3rd and 20 or 3rd and 17 or whatever after taking a big sack. And so the question this week is going to be, seeing the success that Mason Rudolph had chucking the ball down the field, is Ben going to want to sit back a little longer? Are they going to want to try and push the ball down the field the way Mason did last week? Or are they going to want to continue that quick passing attack? I think probably it'll be the latter. I think they're going to want to continue that quick passing attack. It's going to be a team that's going to feel like with the defense, the way it's playing, especially giving some guys like TJ Watt and Cam Hayward the week off and allowing them to rest. Even Vince Williams only played like 20% of snaps on last Sunday. So having a healthy defense, I think they're going to go back to that. Hey, let's just try not to screw this up offensively and let the defense do their thing. Hopefully get some turnovers and get out of here with a win.
Yeah, for as good as the Steelers defense did look last week. Not having T.J. Watt, Cam Hayward, and crew. Getting those guys back after being able to rest for a week is obviously a huge addition to your game plan and what you can do
Yeah.
schematically. The Browns are going to be without Joel Bitonio. We touched on that briefly earlier. They're probably going to start Michael Dunn at that left guard spot. Um, so the one position, a left guard, who is the guy who's probably going to be dealing with Cam Hayward the most between him and Jedrick Wills.
Hmm.
Um, not having him there, not having Batonio there, is such a huge blow to this offensive line, right? And
Yeah.
for a team that wants to constantly run the football, and a team that needs to provide Baker with good pass protection, not having Joel Batonio is so massive. And the Steelers defensive line. We talked how good the Browns defensive line is. The Steelers is probably even better than the Browns, especially when you have somebody like T.J. Watt out there, who's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year, I think. Um,
Yeah, it's
you
him.
know,
It's him and Aaron Donald. And if they give it to Aaron Donald, cool. I mean, Aaron Donald's the best defensive player in the league. You can't argue with it.
yeah, there's certainly a case to be made for T.J. Watt and what he's done this season.
Yeah.
And it's weird that he's turned out to maybe be the better of the Watt brothers, which which
Right.
is
The
which
Steelers
is
got the better. It's better than two.
which is kind of hard to fathom. But you know, this offense is going to have to get creative, I think, in order to move the football with that defensive line, especially missing Michael Dunn. I could definitely see a lot of quick stuff. Which Baker can excel in as long as he can get in a rhythm. The quick stuff works. If he doesn't, it's very difficult for him to hit that quick stuff. But I certainly see lots of runs to the outside and a lot of quick passes to try and neutralize that defensive front for the Steelers.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it was such a key to the game last week too. I mean, I was so surprised that the Steeler defense was able to, without T.J. Watt and without Cam Hayward, that they've got pressure on Baker at times, and they got 4 sacks in the game. So I think you're absolutely right. I think that it was a huge part of the first matchup, right, and why the Steelers were so successful defensively. As I thought Cam Hayward was a monster. Alualu at the time was playing phenomenal football, and they just they were able to shut down that Browns running game. They got a big lead early and then, put it all on Baker and it went from there. So you're right. It's going to be a key to this one is can that same thing happen again? Because the Steelers run defense lately, not what it was back then. If you remember back when the Browns and Steelers played the first time around, that was between the best running game in football and the best run defense in football. Today, I can't tell you that the Steelers are the best run defense anymore. They've certainly taken a step back, and it's for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, injuries being key among them, right? When you lose Devin Bush and Robert Spillane, his backup at the inside linebacker spot, and you have to trade for a guy from the Jets to take over. Well, that's gonna hurt you a little bit. And then they lose Bud Dupree for the year. Obviously, and they never really found a rotational defensive lineman that they liked, and so that meant more snaps for guys like Tuitt on that defensive line. So yeah, I mean the Steeler defensive line, they've got to come to play in this game. They've got to be more like they were in that first matchup, and shut down this running game. And then if they from there, you get some pressure on Baker, right? And the Steelers are going to do that by not just the defensive line, but by blitzing as well. This team loves to bring 5, and so I think you'll see that a lot in this game. I think they rushed 5 40% of the time in the first matchup, only 30% last week. But like you said, that was a vanilla game plan from the Steelers. The one guy to watch out for in this game, we talk about kind of the front 7 here, or the pass rush. Look out for Alex Highsmith, and I'm sure Browns fans know about him because he had the sack last week. He was
Yeah,
actually
well, let
yeah,
me butt in here. This is another thing. We might have touched on it earlier in the year, but this was another thing that made me very upset with the Steelers because that was one linebacker that I was and many Browns fans were pounding the table for
yeah.
them to draft. And when he ended up on his, oh, here we go again. So he's just one of those guys, and I seen him. Um, just have so much success this season and get pressure on people. But I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No. Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, you were right to be high on him because, boy, this guy is turning out to be a very good edge rusher for the Steelers, and not just as a pass rusher, although that's primarily where you're seeing him right now. The guy was instrumental in that comeback against the Colts. He had a big pressure in that game. Got Rivers to throw an interception in that one, and then last week, he had not only did he have a sack, but he also had the pressure that made Baker step up, and I believe that was Tuitt who finished it up. But Highsmith is turning out to be a really good player at a moment when the Steelers needed it because Bud Dupree, he's playing on the franchise tag. It's likely his last year in Pittsburgh, but going down with that ACL was such a big loss for them because, boy, you're going up against not just T.J. Watt, but then Bud Dupree on the other side. It stops you from being able to key on just one guy because, you're going to double team T.J. Watt, okay, but now you're going to leave one-on-ones for guys like Tuitt and Hayward and Bud Dupree. Just too much to ask for. And that's why the Steelers have led the league in sacks and for like the last 3 years. So watching Highsmith come up so big lately, I think has to be a big thing for Steeler fans, and it's going to be another key to this game, which is can Highsmith continue that big play when it, in all likelihood, the focus of the Browns offensive line is going to be on, hey, let's slow down T.J. Watt. Let's not let him be the playmaker in this game. That's going to leave some opportunities for Highsmith. He came up pretty big last week. He's going to have to come up even bigger in this game.
I know we've talked a lot about the Browns COVID issues, but the Steelers have had a few as well. Ebron and Joe Hayden. Do you expect those guys to be back this week?
Joe Hayden is no Hayden. Hayden will not play. This game is going to be about who loves Joe more, right? Because the Steelers are doing it for Joe Hayden, and the Browns are doing it for Joe Bitonio, right? Both teams. It's funny because I was looking at quotes for both teams in their press conferences, and I think it was Jarvis Landry who said, we're doing this one for Joe Bitonio because he is such a good guard for that team, and he can't play in the playoff game. Same thing for Hayden, right? It's like, hey, this would be Hayden's second playoff game as a Steeler. He cannot play. I think it was Vince Williams said, we're dedicating this one to Joe Hayden. Hayden won't play. It'll be Cam Sutton will play in his spot, which actually I like Cam Sutton's game a lot, and you would still see him in the dime. The worry actually is going to be that means that Justin Lane is going to have to play in dime as well, and Justin Lane is the one who last week gave up a big play along the sideline because he's just not there yet as a corner. The miscommunication on that play, and you'll see Justin Lane in this game. As far as Ebron, Ebron will play. I think he was activated. He was just activated off the COVID list, or he will be tomorrow if not. He will definitely play in this game. Although I have to say, look, Eric Ebron is a fine player, and there are times where Eric Ebron looks like he's he could be a top tight end. The problem for Eric Ebron is there are also the times where he is just a complete frustrating mess out there. And we talk about the Steelers and the problems offensively they've had. One of the big ones was they just started dropping balls at the time. It was Deontay Johnson and it was Eric Ebron, and they combined for like 14 between them. So, Ebron will be back. I don't know that that's it's a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but Vance McDonald, just it was a breath of fresh air for me as a Steeler fan because they threw it to the tight end and didn't have to worry about, is he going to drop it? Is he going to fumble? Is something crazy going to happen on this play? No, Vance is going to catch it. He might break a tackle or two and get you 7-8 yards and some consistency at that position.
We talked a little bit about this Steelers defense, but this Browns offense, to me, and the defense as well. This game, if the Browns have a chance, right, and right now it's probably a puncher's chance with everything that's going on against them at this moment. But if the Browns are going to win this game, they are going to need their 2 number 1 picks, Baker Mayfield and Myles Garrett, to probably have to both have the games of their lives. And I know that's not much of a recipe for success, but you're going to have to see Baker do what he's done all season long, and then some, which is manage the game, not turn the ball over. Which I know he had those 3 fumbles against the Jets, but he's only thrown, I think it was 1 interception in the last 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, he's been very good.
He's not turned the ball over in that sense in terms of interceptions. You have Myles Garrett on the other side who can absolutely take over games at times. If the Browns are going to have a chance to win this game, both these guys need to play like the franchise players that they are,
Yeah.
and probably then some. And you're gonna need, I don't know, 300 yards from Baker Mayfield at least. Probably two sacks from Myles Garrett. And on top of what he does in the running game, which to me always goes unstated for what he does in the running game, because he can completely control what a team does. What the other team does in a running game. He has that kind of presence, not only as a pass rusher, but as a run defender as well. But are you in that same sentiment that these two players are going to kind of have to have the games of their lives on Sunday as things stand right now for the Browns to have a chance?
I mean, I definitely think. Well, I'll say this about Baker. I think Baker cannot make big interceptions or anything like that. Like, he cannot have the big mistake of the game, right? Like we saw Mason Rudolph have last week. If that happens, this is. I know it's cliche to say it about the turnover battle, but I mean, it really is the case. Whoever wins the turnover battle in this game wins the football game. I just don't see either team being able to overcome it. Because in games where Baker is, turnover prone, again, he's not usually lighting it up, on the offensive side as well. And for the Steelers, when they're turning the ball over offensively, it's because Bad Ben showed up. And look, the way to me, the way for the Browns to win this game is pretty simple. It's the fact that the Steelers' offense is just not very good right now. It's just not a good offense. And you touched on it earlier on in the show. This is a team that for the last couple of weeks I've been saying week in and week out, this Steeler team is going to be one and done in the playoffs. You cannot play offense the way that they've played and then go up and show up in the playoffs and just Mr. Magoo your way to a win, right? I mean, there's no way that they're just going to, oh, well, we just happen to have more points at the end. That was cute when it happened against like Baltimore, right? And those games, and Jacksonville, Cincinnati, those games. It's not going to happen in the playoffs. So, the way for the Browns to win is that bad offense shows up again. And it's very likely that it does because, again, as you touched on, only 2 quarters we've seen out of this offense that looked anything like we saw midseason, right? We all remember when Chase Claypool was catching 4 touchdowns against the Eagles. That was like 8 weeks ago, right? What we've seen recently is an offense that just cannot figure it out. And it's self-inflicted wound after self-inflicted wound. They can't run the football, so everything's on Ben, right? And you got the receivers dropping passes. You've got an offense that doesn't really want to push the ball down the field. It's a risk averse, right? So everything's going to be underneath. Well, now teams are just going to sit on the underneath stuff. And then you saw in the Buffalo game that led to a pick 6. You saw in Cincinnati, Ben Roethlisberger trying to start to fit things into tight windows, throwing bad interceptions. He had a bad fumbled snap in that game. And then look, people get on me because I get on the coaching staff, but I think Randy Fichtner, as an offensive coordinator and as a game planner in this season, just hasn't done a very good job. You look at this team has scored on the opening drive 1 touchdown in 2 years. In 2 years, they don't get off to fast starts. In fact, in the first quarter this year, they've only scored 42 points. That's 2.6 points per game. So if they kick a field goal in the first quarter of this game, that'll be an improvement over what they've done in the regular season. I think that's the big problem for this team right now is the Steelers offense can and will let them down, and it'll allow Baker Mayfield and whatnot. Look, if Baker and the Browns come out and they're hot at the early portions of this game, they will take a lead because, as I said, the Steelers don't score first quarter points. So, I think yeah, you're right. Baker's probably got to come out. He's got to play well. He cannot have big mistakes against a good Steeler defense because the Steelers will then make him punish with short field. But if the Browns make this Steeler team, hey, you're going to drive down on us. You're not going to hit big plays. You're going to have to be consistent down the field. As a Steeler fan, I just can't sit here and tell you today that I'm confident that the offense that I've watched for the last 6 weeks is going to be able to do that for a 60-minute football game.
This game, I think can go one of 2 ways, right? I think it could end up how it did early on in the season, to where it snowballs very quickly.
Yeah.
For either side, right? But the way I think the Browns can have real success and have a chance to win this game is if, like you mentioned, Baker getting off to a hot start on Sunday, they score, the first couple times down the field, whether it be, a combination of a touchdown and field goal. They can't go down and get 2 field goals because you can't kick field goals against the Steelers and expect to win the game. And the way Cody Parkey's been lately, I don't even want to think about that. But if they're able to go down in the first quarter, get 10 points at least, and you're able to hold the Steelers off the scoreboard, then you could begin the phase of the game for the Browns that has been so good all year long, and that is running the football.
Yeah.
We've gone this whole podcast, and have not talked about Nick Chubb yet. This guy has done. Having 1,000 yards while missing 4 games with the ankle is nothing short of incredible. And what he's been able to do this season, has been great. If they're able to score early and they could start to control the pace of the game with the running game, the Steelers could be in a lot of trouble. But it relies upon, like we mentioned, the Browns getting off to a really hot start.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. And I think, Chubb's going to be a problem in this game. He didn't play the first time around. Minka made a business decision on that 40-yarder that he had.
He sure did.
Yeah, I was happy with it. I was like, Minka, we are not trying to bring down Nick Chubb in the open field in a meaningless game. No, thank you.
It was about as about of a bad as business decision as Earl Thomas against Nick Chubb last year.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, especially for Minka in this game, where you can make the argument that are we sure Minka should have been playing? He played every single defensive snap for the Steelers on Sunday. Boy, what a silly way Minka had gone down in that game. You're right. I mean, the running game is going to be key for this Browns team. If they're going to have success offensively, it's got to start through the run, because if it's all on Baker, I just think it's too much to ask of him in this game where the Steelers are going to bring so much pressure at him. They did it the first time around. I think they're going to do it again. He's got to have that safety valve. And again, the other thing I come back to, he's not going to have the safety valve of Kevin Stefanski, who's been such a good play caller for him this year, put him in such good situations. You look at Baker's interception numbers in his career, and the numbers are just staggering, that he went from 14 interceptions his rookie year to 21 last year to just 8 this year. And while, yes, that is improvement in Baker Mayfield himself, I think you have to give a huge shout out to Kevin Stefanski for putting Baker Mayfield in these situations to be successful and have him avoid turnover like that, especially in recent weeks. So that's the really tough part for me, is imagine what this game would be with Kevin Stefanski in it, going up against the Steeler defense.
All right, Tony, before we get on out of here, before I ask, your prediction for Sunday.
Yeah.
If you had to pick one player, coach, for as an X factor for this game on Sunday, for that is probably going to determine the outcome of this game, who would that be?
Who is the X factor in this game? I'm gonna say TJ Watt, because I think this game, like I said, it comes down to turnovers. This Steeler team, when they win, it's because not only is their offense playing well, because they've even won games this year where they didn't play well, but it's because they were getting big turnovers and big moments and giving that offense short fields, or even just scoring for them like they did in Baltimore. So TJ Watt, and just kind of, and what, not just TJ Watt, but really the entire defense, but for TJ Watt in particular, if he's out there wreaking havoc, and this defense is feeding off of that, and they're getting turnovers specifically. Look, they lost to Cincinnati this year. They got no turnovers in that game. They lost to Washington this year. They got no turnovers in this game. And while they did get turnovers against Buffalo, remember Ben played so poorly in that game, it didn't matter. And of course, they didn't get turnovers last week against Cleveland. So I think it's TJ. I think it's his defense. I think they have to get turnover.
I have an interesting one for you.
Okay.
I think it's Alex Van Pelt, the offensive coordinator for the Browns. Obviously, with Kevin Stefanski not there, he's going to be calling plays this Sunday. And, here's a guy who, you've heard a little bit of buzz about him in NFL circles about, getting some looks. And, if there's ever an opportunity to showcase what you have, it's going to be this Sunday in this playoff game. And I think that, him and Stefanski have worked so well this season in game planning and whatnot, that I think he's fully prepared to go ahead and call this game on Sunday. And if he calls a great game on Sunday, and gives this Browns offense life and the firepower to go out there and have a chance in this game, it's obviously going to be a huge success for him. but I think that he certainly has an opportunity on Sunday to really show, his thought process, his mindset, and to showcase what he has. And
Yeah.
to me, I think that he's going to be just as important as anybody else in this game, especially since he has the play calling duties thrown upon him.
No, you're absolutely right. It's a great point. And I think that the key for him, right, is and I think Brown fans will see this on Sunday, the game should probably look a little different offensively, right? It should feel a little different offensively because Stefanski's not calling plays, because it's Alex Van Pelt. And for Van Pelt, I think that the thing that he should remember is, like, I don't think he should go into this game trying to imitate, what would Stefanski do in this situation, right? He's got to call this game within, like you said, he's got to prove to everyone the kind of play caller that he is, right? The kind of offense that he has. And while, yes, it will be similar to Stefanski, it should feel a little different. And that's how you know that he's a confident play caller. If he's going into this game, if his mindset is, I'm going to try and call this like Kevin would, well, you're not going to be able to, because you're not Kevin Stefanski. And I think that would be a mistake. He should go into this game feeling like, I'm going to call this my way, do this my way. And it may look a little different, and it may throw the Steelers defense off a little bit, because, again, Alex Van Pelt, to my knowledge, has not called a single play for the Cleveland Browns this year.
Yeah, while they've worked, closely all season in the game planning and whatnot, no, he has not. There was a time back in preseason, or I think the plan was back in preseason, that he was going to call a game or two, but obviously there was no preseason this year, so that didn't happen. So this Sunday is going to be completely new for him, and it might take a drive or two for him to settle in. But typically those first couple drives are scripted anyways, and Stefanski is going to have a huge part in that still, I would imagine, in scripting those plays. Working from home and doing what he can. But after you get past those those however many that they script, it's going to be all on Van Pelt.
Yep.
And I think that it's certainly going to be interesting to watch, to see what he's able to do in leading this offense, and giving the Baker confidence to have success on Sunday, getting this running game going. And to me, I just think he's the biggest X factor in this game.
That's a good point. It's a good point.
All right, I gave you a heads up here. I want to get your prediction. I know we're both of us are leaning on this, and it pains me to do so. But what's your prediction for Sunday night?
It's tough. Like I said, I go on AFC North Talk week after week, and I've been telling Steeler fans, I've been preparing them since that game against Baltimore. But really, I did a whole rant after the Washington game, preparing them for the inevitability that this team would be one and done. And yet here we are now, right? And the Steelers have these big favorites, and I'm being told what an embarrassing loss it would be to lose to the Browns in this situation, right? Up there with losing to Bortles and Tebow and all that. Okay, great. So am I really going to predict that that's going to happen? Am I really going to predict that this team is going to lose to them? I can't do it, right? Even though, look, the Browns have a narrow path to victory, as I said, right? I think it involves the Steeler offense playing poorly. The problem is it's really not that narrow, right? When you consider the fact that the Steeler offense has played poorly for the last month and a half, outside of a quarter. I just think there's so many ways for the Steelers to win this game, right? I think that if this defense can get some turnovers and give this offense some short fields, that's good enough, even if the offense is stagnant as they've been, for the second half of this season. So I'm going to take the Steelers in this one. I'm not overly confident. I'm not one of these Steeler fans who's coming out saying, "Oh, we're definitely going to win because our backups almost beat you, and so our starters are going to come out there and roll you." I don't think that ever adds up, right? We don't. It's the MMA math stuff. We never see that. So I'm going to predict the Steelers, but it's not going to surprise me if it's close, and it's certainly not going to shock me if the Steelers lose to the Browns.
That was a lot less confident than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I'm not one of the irrational Steeler fans.
And I have a very good friend who's a Steelers fan, and and we've been talking, for the last couple of weeks, that it's so unfortunate that both teams aren't full strength, because we want nothing more than to, have this game on Sunday, have everybody out there, and just put forth the best effort on both sides. And while you're still going to get the best effort from both sides, there's certainly a talent gap that's missing. Mm-hmm. Especially from the Brown side, and the Steelers have had their share of injuries too. But I'm not I'm not very confident. I know that's really not a shock, especially when you consider what the Browns have lost in the past couple of weeks. In terms of players and injuries, and even all season too. There's so many guys. I don't even know if I want to go down this list of the players that they're just missing from injuries, whether it be Delpit, who was supposed to be a huge
Yeah.
um, thing in the secondary, not having OBJ, not having Greedy Williams. You're down to Michael Dunn starting on offensive line because you lose Chris Hubbard, you lose Nick Harris. Um, so there's so much that this team has lost. You lost Olivier Vernon last week, um, and that doesn't even include all the guys on the COVID list right now. So you know with as much talent that the Browns have lost this year, they still managed to get to 11-5. They still managed to get to the playoffs. This team still has been able to go in and week out and compete very hard. Outside of two football games, the Ravens game and the Steelers game early on in the season, um, which that Ravens game is an aberration just in the fact that no training camp, not no preseason, and they're expected to go in there against that Ravens team who has everything together. But um, this team all season has, regardless of what's gone on, still found a way to compete and win football games. And while they've been able to do that, look, it's still the Pittsburgh Steelers, and obviously playing at Heinz Field, uh, the Browns haven't won there in so long, uh, and it's just a tough thing to do, especially going up against that defense in a playoff scenario. Now, it's nice, I guess, that there's no fans there because they can have a little bit better communication.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
I know that. I think I saw family and friends because I saw that they ruled that they weren't allowed to have any fans there at all. So it's just going to be like family and friends there for the game on Sunday. But um, just to have that little bit of communication will be nice. But still playing in that stadium is not been kind to Cleveland, and obviously that defense is very tough. So I I'm still not confident that they're going to be able to get over the hurdle on Sunday night. I think it's going to end up being close, but I would not be shocked if things snowball very quickly, um, kind of like they did in that earlier matchup early on in the season.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, look, if the Steelers' offense comes to play, if what we saw in the second half against Indy continues in this matchup, I agree with you. Just think it's going to be hard without the players that they have and without Stefanski there to provide that leadership at the coaching position. I agree with you. There's a definitely a considerable chance that this game looks a lot like the first one.
All right, Tony. This is it's always great having you on because we get to talk Brown Steelers, and if there's two teams I respect the most in this league. One is the Buffalo Bills, and two is Pittsburgh Steelers. Just based on the past and the great rivalry, but the fact that franchise over in Pittsburgh was one of the ones to vote that we stayed. Uh, in
Yeah.
Cleveland, and there's always been that level of respect there. After I grew up and learned everything that happened, um, it's a shame that it did happen, but there's that's the reason why there's always that respect there. And I've always had um, good friends that are Steelers fans. Unfortunately, it's gotten me into trouble with bets and whatnot over the years. But I'm looking forward to another playoff matchup. And look, if we get a game as exciting as the one back in 2003, I think we'll definitely all enjoy that and take that on Sunday night.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, yeah, certainly. And first of all, the Browns were the team. Brown Steelers is the classic, right? I mean, this is it. This is what I grew up on. So I'm excited to watch it on Sunday. And look, it comes with that added excitement, right? Because I'm sure you feel the same way. Steelers Colts would have been a fun playoff game or whatever. But Steelers Browns, listen, if the Steelers win, then they have the bragging rights all off season. And if the Browns win, especially considering the circumstances, Steeler fans, we are never going to hear the end of it. So, yeah, I'm super excited for this game.
This a Browns win could set up my like favorite Browns run to the Super Bowl, right? Like
Yeah,
to go through the Steelers and Baltimore in the same postseason would
that's
just
the
like
dream.
that
That's the
that is
dream.
that's the dream, right? And maybe the one thing that would have been even better was to maybe play Tom Brady and the Patriots and go through them too. But
Hey, you
that's
might get him in the Super Bowl.
maybe, yeah. But it would have been even better just because I hate Boston even more. Uh, but look, this game on Sunday should be a lot of fun. I know that there's a lot that's not going to be on that field on Sunday, but I still think that we're going to get a good football game, and there's no doubt that both teams are going to come prepared to play, regardless of what talent is out there and what talent is not out there. So um, I think we're all excited to watch this game. And look, it's a Sunday night game. Who better to call than Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth? I never thought I'd hear Al Michaels call a Browns playoff game. With the way things have gone, so I'm excited to watch that game on Sunday night, and I think it's definitely gonna be a good one, and it should definitely be a lot of fun. Tony, like I said, always great having you on. If you want to plug everything you got, the
Yeah.
floor is yours.
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Steeler Country. And you can find me on YouTube. That is AFC North Talk. It's a roundtable show. 4 of us are on there. I represent the Pittsburgh Steelers on that show, but we have representatives from the Ravens, Bengals, and Browns. So make sure you check that out. It's live Tuesdays and Thursdays, 5:45 p.m. Eastern Time. So subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. You'll be notified when we go live. But you can also watch it on video on demand, or if you need to, if you can't be there live. But it's a great show. Check it out. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, like I said, it's always great having you on. You always bring so much to the podcast, and I can't thank you enough for how much you've been willing to come on the show,
Yeah.
and how much knowledge that you drop when you do come on. It's always great to have you on the show, and um, I think if I'd have to go back and check, but I think we might have had you on the show the most. So.
Woo.
Uh,
How about that? I appreciate it,
uh,
man. Yeah, this is always a fun conversation. I love coming on, love going on opposing fans podcast. And listen, it's this is what it's all about. This playoff game on Sunday. This is next time we talk, one of us is gonna have extreme bragging rights over the other.
Yeah, we got that right. And hopefully maybe we can have the bragging rights all off season. That would be nice.
Right.
I think it'd be like an extended Christmas miracle. We'll take it. But as always, you guys can follow the show on Twitter and on Facebook at the Dogland. Shoot me a follow over on Twitter as well at Anthony Joki, Joki. With all that, we're gonna get on out of here. Me and Jack should probably have another quick podcast before the game on Sunday. We're not sure about that yet, but we probably will. Gonna get on out of here and leave you all with the most important thing. And I know you won't appreciate this, Tony, so you can just ignore this next part. But go Browns!